day they will.
Got it.
In that day they will first. There is coming a day when the bridegroom is taken away, and in that day they will mourn. In that day they will fast, and they will say that things as they are not okay. When someone is missing, someone is absent. Yeah, they will say things as they are not okay. When someone is missing, someone is absent. There is coming a day when the bridegroom is taken away.
Hey folks, Radio Preacher Man for Self-Reliance. These are hard times, and it could get harder. You've seen the droughts, you've seen the floods, nationwide, worldwide even. So 7 billion people got to eat, so don't be left out with nothing to eat. Get yourself some victuals put back on the shelf. Now I got a product I want to tell you about. It's called Shelf Reliance, and this is good food. You can use it on a regular basis. Get you some dehydrated food, and you got some easy prep meats. They got vegetables and fruits dehydrated, ready to eat as a snack, or you can reconstitute them for your cooking needs. You can get grains, bread, milk, eggs. It's a full line of food products, even dessert, such as ice cream and fudge brownies. Hello. So check it out at radiopreacherman.shelfreliance.com. That's radiopreacherman.shelfreliance.com. It's also a wonderful business opportunity for those of you looking to do something with your lives on the side, or instead of being unemployed, or whatever your situation is, brothers and sisters.
Things are not okay right now. Oh, things are not okay right now. Things are not okay right now. Jesus, things are not okay right now. Things are not okay right now. Things are not okay right now. Things are not okay, and they won't be till you come back. No, they won't be till you come back. No, they won't be till you come back. No, they won't be till you come back. Things are not
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Revelations Per Minute with the Radio Preacher Man. Got an unexpected in-tag message come up here. I don't know what that means. I'll just X out of that thing. Ha! Welcome to Revelations Per Minute. God bless each and every one of you that are here tonight. And I tell you, I got all kinds of strange scenarios going on. It's like behind the camera is a mirror on the closet door mirror, so I end up trying to look, and then that gets me looking the same direction there, but then I got to look around the pole the camera's mounted on. It's all crazy, but it looks good in the picture here, so I'm going to run with it. Amen. I'm quasi-professional, I guess. We're getting there. One day I'm going to have me one of them green screen situations jumping off here. Troy been asking about. But anyway, I love the Lord tonight, and I was singing that song and just getting down with it. As always, I got to say something. It may not be good right now all around the globe, but this is not long, people. This is so not long. I was talking to the Lord just yesterday, and I was on the road, and I could sense that the time is short. I said, Lord, I'm just crazy enough to put my trust in you fully right now. Hey, and everything will be all right. Now, tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen, so hang tight. We'll have a prayer probably in a minute here. But tonight's guest is Jonathan Gray. You might recognize that name. He was on a week or so ago, but we're going to discuss another work of his. And he is an international explorer, archaeologist, and author. And he's led or accompanied 25 expeditions, amen, comprising teams of international researchers, of which I'm becoming slowly but surely, it seems. I did make a couple trips overseas in my time on Earth, amen. Now, he has published more than 100 books and videos and written several hundred papers and hosted newspaper columns even. And he is a globally recognized researcher in the fields of history, prophecy, and international affairs. So we're going to get with John Gray about his other work tonight, Will You Survive? And with a careful eye on evidence, his documentation often includes certificates, private letters, and facts, which most investigators refuse to publish. So John is what you call transparent with us tonight, and he's a very sought-after speaker. We're glad to have him here, and he's been a frontline archaeologist in the field for over 44 years, ladies and gentlemen. Now, that's longer than, well, I don't want to make him feel old, but but that's a long time. John, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very well, thank you, Brian. It's good to be with you today, this evening.
Oh, yes. Yes, I tell you, I haven't spoken much today, to be honest, so I feel like this is all, I guess I haven't used my words today. I've been like studying and writing a paper all day for a class, and basically since whatever time I got up this morning, I've been in paper mode, you know, and so anyway, we're going to do this broadcast, and then I'm going to try to get back into writing the paper, Jonathan, because I don't want to get behind. It's due on Friday of this week at the latest. So say a little prayer for me in that respect, folks, when you get a chance this week. But okay, let's open with a word of prayer, Jonathan, and ask the Lord to come in and anoint this time together. We had a great time the last time you were on, and I believe we'll have a good time again tonight. Amen. Lord, we come before you. And we worship you, and we come before you, and I thank you for the praise and time we've had today, and Lord, the fellowship with you that we've had today. Each one of my listening audience, I will presume you've had some time to talk to the Lord today and to worship his name. Hallelujah. And I pray a special blessing tonight over each person in the listening audience and those that listen by archive, and I pray an anointing for Jonathan and myself for this broadcast tonight, that we could bring glory to your name, Lord. Amen. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So, hallelujah. Now, we were discussing this book, The Forbidden Secret, the last time you were on, Jonathan, charting your rescue from the New World Order. And but I guess tonight we're going to talk about Will You Survive? And that's an interesting question. Oh my, what will you eat, Jonathan? When the grocery store shelves are empty is the first thing that comes to every person's mind, I have a feeling. You know, they might think of electricity briefly, but it really comes down to food and water. We cannot live without food and water. I know many of my people, and I've encouraged them to buy some emergency food to put back. And but what is the answer from your book's perspective when we ask the question, what will we eat when the store shelves are empty?
Well, it's a good question, and the purpose of that question is to generate thought in preparation. Mm-hmm. And it's true that the time will come, and The safest place to be, of course, as I've said before, Brian, is out of the big cities into a place where you can have your own garden. If you can't get out of the cities and get to a semi area where you can at least have your own fruit, your own vegetables. If you can't get out, then start sprouting, because you can do that in your kitchen. And sprouts, I understand, are 300 times more powerful than any other food. At the time when a little seed is developing into two tiny shoots of leaves, that's when its energy potential is the most powerful for the human body.
So when is it most powerful?
In Australia.
When are the sprouts most powerful?
Most powerful food on earth.
They are?
Sprouting trees.
I'll be. That's awesome to know.
Back in Australia, there was a farmer. In Australia, of course, it's the driest continent on earth, and they have a lot of droughts. And there was a 7-year drought in western New South Wales some time back. And I know of one farmer who had 200 cows, and all the grass dried up. What was he going to do? Kill the cows or try to keep afloat? So what he did was he built a shed about the size of one small garage you'd put a car in, and he lined it with shelves, and he stacked one shelf above another, tiered like tiered ready for water to come to. He put a bit of hose there. He let the hose trickle through from one level down to the next level, down to the next level, and on each level he had shoots, bean shoots, and various other shoots. And he fed the cows a handful per day of shoots for each cow, and they all survived.
Wow. Did they get, like, really skinny? But, they was lean. There wasn't no fat in that meat, was there?
Oh, yeah, they were lean, but they were healthy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So whenever he took them to town, they was a good quality meat. I bet he wanted to keep that for himself, because there wasn't no fat in that. Amen.
Yes.
But that's awesome to know. And when you say get out of big cities, Jonathan, I'm curious, what do you reckon to be a big city? Is there a numeral population, like maybe 10,000 or smaller is okay? Or when you say big city, you're talking like New York City?
I think probably 10,000 and smaller is comparatively safe. By big cities, I'm thinking of cities where you get into a road, you try to get out of the city, and the place is jammed full of cars, and you crawl and stop and crawl and stop. And in that situation, it would be very, very easy to die, because all you need is gas coming over the place, roadblocks that stop you getting out, and so on. I've been caught in roadblocks in big cities. In fact, last week I had to go to Auckland, which Auckland is not a big city by American standards. It's got about 1.5 million people. And we went about a half a mile in half an hour.
Uh-huh. That's crawling right there.
We caught the traffic. I picked up somebody at the airport, and we caught the traffic. Well, the traffic caught us, and it was a great relief to get out of that eventually.
Yes, sir. I had a similar situation when I lived in Korea, and we were about, I think, just a 3 or 4 mile drive to the base from my in-laws' house, and if we left like 5 minutes till 7, we could roll right into the base. But if we left about 5 minutes after 7, it would take an hour to get that few miles through. It was just like you're saying. It was all about that window right there. There was about a 10-minute window where it got progressively worse. So you needed to leave on time to get to work on time. And we learned that lesson. We sure did in a hurry. And
yes, you never forget it.
Yeah.
And if the authorities, for some reason of national emergency, block the streets also around the big cities, and I understand that they are being placed into position already, big blocks of concrete near the fringes of big cities already, and they're thinking ahead for the time when they have to blockade the cities and not let people in or out. If they don't let people in or out, that means no food supplies coming into the supermarkets to replace that which is being bought.
Wow. That's a dangerous situation. So you're discussing martial law, essentially, if they close off the city, be for a reason of a disease spreading rapidly or something, you know, how they can quarantine a city that way. And I have noticed, even on the highways where they have those concrete blocks down the middle, if you notice, they're not solid a lot of times. They're blocks where they could actually probably move them and block off even the interstate. You know.
Oh, I believe that's on the agenda in time of emergency, yes. And it can be a health scare, it might be a political crisis. We don't know what could generate it, but all of these dangers are ever ready. And we have to be ready, because you don't want to be caught in a situation like that.
Certainly not. Well, and even the toll roads, you know, those could easily be closed down. So there's a lot going on here. Do you feel that martial law will be imposed when we talk about these kind of things? Now that we've...
Yes, this is only my opinion, but it's based upon some good intelligence that keeps coming our way, and we do believe that plans are afoot in the United States in particular to bring that about for one reason or another, possibly any time soon. We can't tell when or what will trigger it, but the danger is there.
My. And what would be the benefit of doing this? I mean, other than I know it's about control, but why would you say that America would do it as opposed to some other country?
Well, America actually, if you don't mind me saying, is the biggest obstacle to the New World Order. American sovereignty is powerful. And there are people who want to demolish and destroy American sovereignty so that they can rule the world. And while America is strong and free, that is an obstacle. And there are unscrupulous men who are planning things that would not normally be possible. Without putting anyone into danger on this, I would say you've just got to watch your events and stay close to God.
Yes, stay close to God is for reals, folks. It's also possible, too, Jonathan, that it's got to do with the fact that a lot of Americans are armed, you know. So if they can, you know, divide and conquer kind of thing, if they do martial law, they got everybody kind of trapped in their home or in their car or wherever they happen to be at the time. So it could be something to that effect, you know.
Oh, yes, most certainly.
If they do it during the workday, a lot of guys would be at work and they wouldn't be at home to defend their family and their stuff. I hate to even say that out loud, but I did. So
yes, men will be at work, children will be at school. I'm told that in the plans that are being considered, a 2-hour window of escape from a city would be about the longest permitted. For just everything to be laid in place, and it would take about 2 hours.
Wow. So what can people do to protect their family in this instant?
Well, first and foremost, I don't want to live in a city. If that was the only reason, I'd be happy not to. Mm-hmm. City dwelling actually is becoming more dangerous all the time, and I'm looking here at the bonuses life was created. Cain went out from Eden. He had a curse upon him, and one of the first things he did was when there was enough people, he built a wall around them and put them together in a city. And he built the first recorded city. Then we have after the Tower of Babel, after the flood, we have another city, the great tower that reached to heaven, and people gathered around it, and he built a wall around them, and that was the city of Babel. And then we have another city. All these are in the book of Genesis, which lays the foundation for world history that follows. And we have the city of Sodom, where Lot went in with his family, and he only came out with part of his family because the rest were too well entrenched in their jobs and their commitments and their their affections to leave the city, and he lost half his family, which is very, very sad.
Yes, indeed. Indeed it is, and he's lucky he got out alive. I think if his Uncle Abe wasn't looking out for him, and God, of course, but Abraham was probably praying for him, and that's probably why God let him know ahead of time. And God told him ahead of time, man, and he's like, well, what if there's like 50 folk up in there that are righteous? Would you spare the city? The story, and then he goes down and down in the number until. It's essentially, like you said, Lot and a handful of his family, and that's it. And it was so horrendous, folks, that even the angels that God sent to draw Lot out were sexual objects in the eyes of the men of that city. Absolutely unbelievable. They're like absolutely sent over to depravity, I guess you would say. But it's a very interesting story. And so I guess if we have to move out of the city, where would be the safest place to be?
Safest place would be where there's little population but water. Water would be an essential, either near a river or a lake or a spring, whether it be flat land or mountain land. It wouldn't matter too much, so long as there was water. That's an essential.
Okay, do you think...
Or close accessibility to water.
Yes. Do you think that the powers that be will be content to leave some of those people alone? I mean, do you think it's going to be kind of like people just killing each other for the survival in the city, and that's maybe the main threat rather than the New World Order? Oh,
I think that would be the immediate threat, yes. The supermarket shelves empty. The food runs low, and they go looking. And I know we go back to the fall of Jerusalem, back there in AD 70, the siege that took place there, where the Christians got out of Jerusalem. Jesus warned them. He said, when the time comes, you will see the sign. When you see the Roman army surround the city, you'll know that's time to get out. Well, what happened was that Thestius withdrew his troops for no apparent reason, say the history books. When he had Jerusalem within grasp, he withdrew, and that was the sign Jesus had given the Christians. When you see Jerusalem surrounded, get out. But they couldn't get out till that man withdrew. He withdrew long enough to give them escape. Then the soldiers came back, and Titus took over, and they did not let anyone out of Jerusalem. While the Christians were going out of Jerusalem, others in the surrounding towns were pouring into the city because they thought this great walled city will be a safer place than on the countryside. So the move was into the city by the majority. And only those who were wide awake with the message of Jesus got out of the city, and not one Christian lost his life. And even the Jewish Encyclopedia admits that fact, that the Christians got out. Now, we have a parallel here in Matthew 24.
Yeah. And what was that reference the one you just mentioned, where was that story found at, Jonathan? Do you know right off?
Josephus in the history of the Jews, or the Wars of the Jews. One of those, I think it's the Wars of the Jews, yes. Okay.
And that's in Josephus. Okay. I was just curious. Sure, you're right. Okay, and you said we had a parallel in Matthew 24.
Yes. The disciples were quite proud, as every Jewish person was, of the great temple there in Jerusalem, the second temple, built by command of Cyrus, letting the Jews go back from their captivity in Babylon, and then refurbished again by King Herod. And that temple was glorious. In fact, some of the stonework in that temple is unbelievable for the size. There were stones in that temple that were as big as a passenger bus. Single stones fitted into the temple itself. It was a magnificent structure, a wonder of the world for its time.
Yes, sounds like
it. And so the disciples, they were proud of it. They took Jesus and admired it in his presence.
Yeah.
And then he came out with a shocking prediction. He said, I tell you that not one stone will be left upon another that won't be thrown down. Now that bothered them. And so, looking for a private moment, they came to him later and they said, well, tell us, when will this be and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the world? They could not imagine that the temple would ever be destroyed, at least till the end of the world. So they linked two events, the destruction of the temple that Jesus had predicted, with their knowledge that ultimately he would return and that would be the end of the age.
Good.
Now, Jesus very cleverly gave them 7 signs, the same 7 signs for one event that he gave for the other. He gave the same advice for the Jews of his day as he gives to the people of the end times. And this is, get out of the city. Just don't go back to take things. If suddenly the emergency comes, get out as fast as you can. That's what Jesus said back there. Mm-hmm. Now, I was going to say something else. It will come back to me. But the survival prediction was that while others are pouring in, and it's interesting, our cities are growing, they're exploding, they're convulsing with growth. Mm-hmm. God's people should be looking out of the city, not in the city. And we should be looking for jobs in the city, looking for the education of our children out of the city, and for setting up some means by which we can survive without depending upon the city. Now, if the emergency arises, it's going to be immediate departure. I'm not going to say if, I'll say when the emergency arises, because when the time of trouble comes upon the nation, it's going to fall heavily, more heavily upon the cities than anywhere else. This begins to answer the thought that you raised. Well, where is a safe place? Well, certainly the cities will not be a safe place, and this is why I don't want to overemphasize something, but I do feel it's so important for everyone to sit up and think about this.
Mm-hmm. Well, now there are people that really are going to have a hard time leaving. You know, some people are on a fixed income, and I guess they can still leave at the last minute, right, if they have to. And like you said, don't turn back to take nothing, just cut and run. I mean, if it's that bad. But, I mean, people may have to reside in the city because of their employment and their maybe have a rent fixed apartment, or they own a home in the city or something to that effect, and they're just going to have to kind of stay there for now. These things, we understand, cannot be helped. And some people have a business within the city that they're operating. Is there any way to save their business, or is that just going to be left behind?
Well, I would think when that time comes, well, even now, even though we might have a business in the city, it's not a bad strategy to be looking ahead and trying to protect our assets by moving as much as we can outside. If we've got a business office in the centre of the city, why not start moving it out to the suburbs? That's the first step, rather than in the city centre. And then the next step would be to try to find an easier way to ease out of the business into something that can be run in the country. The small towns, actually, all the businesses that run in the city, except perhaps headquarters, can be run from the small town. And we live in a small town here, but we've got a ministry that goes worldwide, and we don't need to live in the city. But there are some businesses that can be moved. Most businesses can be moved. If it's a wholesale business that supplies thousands of people, it can be located anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And it might be more cost feasible to think about. If you're like on the East Coast in New York City or something, it might be more feasible to move to the middle of the country. You might save money on shipping even. So there could be, of your products, it could be a practical aspect, you know, if you get to a central of the country location even. I'm thinking from an American perspective. It may make good business sense. Cheaper rent, you might be able to save money on your rent as well. So there are some reasons to think about it. Besides the safety aspect, As far as a job, though, if somebody's working inside the city, I guess there's no way to save your job unless you can transfer outside of the city. If you work for a big...
That's correct. I think, Brian, this is where faith in the Lord and asking Him to open doors and shut doors works. I've had so much experience in trusting on the Lord. Well, I've had to trust on Him in certain times. And I know He doesn't fail. If we're genuine about something, He will be genuine about helping us. Absolutely. No question about that. May I give another tip, however? It's a very wise move to stay in fellowship with like-minded friends. And maybe if there's several other families in the city, establish your own emergency notification network between each family.
Yeah.
Have a go bag. Have a bag already prepared with clothes, tent, essentials.
Mm-hmm.
When the power goes down in the city, which might include the loss of telephones, and it may even include AM and FM radio stations going down and local television stations going down, that would mean that power was being intentionally shut off. And you'd know when this was happening because telephones, radio stations, TV stations have backup power. And if the power's being shut off, it means the city is in emergency condition. It means you must leave immediately before the perimeter is established by the civil authority or the military authority. And it may mean that martial law has been imposed and you haven't heard about it.
Wow. And what if you get to the edge of the city, just hypothetically, John, and they got a big barrier put up, and I guess
you get away from the street. You can't use your car, obviously. You get out of your car if you've got it. Go around the roadblocks. I mean, I've known people to sneak into other countries by getting around the customs, just going further out into the country and getting around the customs blockages. And that may be the only way to just hoof it on your feet and trot your way across physically without your car.
Wow. Now, see there, I guess having you on tonight is good for my audience because that's something that we don't often think about is hoofing it. But I had listened to Dave Ramsey a little bit when I was in the car yesterday, and he was like, he had a caller that had been debt-free through his program that slipped back into debt. I don't know if you know who Dave Ramsey is, but he's a guy that tells people how to get out of debt. And
oh yeah.
And so he really went off. He was like, I don't know why you people get out of debt and then you go back in debt. He said, nothing would make me go back in debt. And he gave the example of an automobile. He said, there's no car that is worth me going in debt to get. He's like, if I can't pay cash for a car, I'll get a bicycle. If I can't get a bicycle, my feet still work. And that came to mind just as a side note. I thought, because we're so attached to our material objects, I think it would be difficult for people to actually do that. But if your life is on the line, folks, you need to take his advice. Cut and run. You may have to leave your ride sitting at the roadblock and just run for it. Out into the woods, have yourself a bug-out bag that you can take with you, put on your back. We don't know what the future holds, man. We really don't. So we got to be prepared for any of this. And so what should people do? Oh, go ahead, Jonathan, if you had more to add to that.
No, go ahead, Brian. I'll go where you want to go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, what do we do with money in the bank and those kind of things? I think in that instance, it's pretty much just... Well,
I do know a number of people, Brian, whom I consider are quite wise, and they're starting to draw a little bit at a time of their savings out of the bank and convert it into silver coins. Gold is good too, but gold has a higher value and may be harder to negotiate. Silver would be much easier when the time comes because silver is in small values, and as you need it, you have to spend it. And I would think that is a very wise move to have a certain amount of silver, but don't store it in the city. If you're going to have to carry a huge bag of half a ton of silver or something, you don't want to lug around that. The best thing is to have a country location already in mind where you have such things, and all you have to take in emergency if you're still in the city is yourself and what you're wearing almost, and maybe a little bit of food if you have it, and your children.
Wow, okay. Now that's another thing. If they declare this during the daytime, you've got to go from your job to the school to get the kids and still get out within a certain amount of time. That's not going to be easy for a lot of folks.
It's not going to be easy. That's true.
But God is able.
On this side of the world, we're expecting it's going to happen here too. Ultimately, I'm thinking of a family we know very, very well. They're very close to us. They live in the city of Brisbane, Australia, which has close to 2 million people. And the mother has 6 children, and they all have jobs in the city. And we've been telling them to get out soon because there have been crises over there, and it demonstrates they're going to have a hard job getting out when the time comes. And we've been urging them to locate to a smaller city and or somewhere where they can be self-sufficient and maybe drive into the city to their jobs, but not live in the city. Well, the lady is talking about pulling down her old house and getting a block of apartments built in replacement. She's not planning for anything like this. She's only planning for an untroublesome future where everything is going to be rosy, as it has been for the last 100 years. And we feel sorry because the children, in the meantime, are soaking up the city atmosphere. One of them has now gone to prison, a girl who she stole from her employer, and she's now in prison. 2 others have suddenly become in an atmosphere where they became pregnant, and the mother is so distressed, and she doesn't know what to do, but she hasn't been listening. So it's not just national emergencies we're talking about, it's the atmosphere of the cities as well.
Yes, like Sodom and Gomorrah's time. It was definitely that. There is, and you can use New York City as a demonstration, or New Orleans, all those cities. There's a lot of nightlife that goes on, and probably in the other cities around the globe, Beijing and Seoul, and probably just tons of cities you could mention throughout the countries of the world. And I think when you get more people, you get more of a propensity for the nightlife, and love to nightlife and love to boogie and all those things that go with it. Back in the 70s, we used to sing that. But the thing is that when you're in the country, you're more apt to be content, I think, with having what you have.
Yes, I do. I do believe so.
There's a spirit of discontentment.
The book of Genesis provides us more clues on both survival and the highest quality of life, country living. Yeah. When you look at the first few chapters, you see the Creator's choice of environment for our first parents was natural country living, and mankind's first occupation was gardening, getting his hands into the fresh earth. Mm-hmm. And the home of our first parents was to be a pattern, I believe, for future homes, as their children would go out to occupy the earth. And that first home, beautified by the hand of God himself, it was not a gorgeous big building. Men in their pride have delighted in magnificent and costly structures to glorify the work of their hands, but God placed Adam in a garden. Beautiful outdoor setting was the first home. The heavens was the dome, the earth with its flowers and carpet of living green with its floor. The leafy branches of the trees were its canopy. And I can just visualize its walls hung with the most magnificent adornings, colourful blossoms hanging down from the green dressed branches. All of these, the handiwork of a master artist. Can you imagine anything more delightful?
No.
And I believe that was given to us for all time, an example.
There is a certain element of beauty in nature. There definitely is, without being a tree hugger or nothing like that. I still love Jesus. But it is nice to be able to look at the green, beautiful things that he's created and the trees that he's created and everything. And he is awesome. And just to think he did all that.
Certainly.
Wow. So...
And it raises the question, are we missing something today in our way of life?
Are we missing something? Yeah. I think so. I'm a very I was raised in Indiana, kind of a rural fella. So I'm kind of simple, and my wife's a little more cityfied, so I can relate. She likes to have noise all the time, either a TV going or a computer with somebody talking, and things like this. And for myself, I'm oftentimes content with the peace and quiet. I may be, like today, I didn't have any radios or TVs playing. I just was working on my paper, and it was very quiet. Just me and my thoughts and my books and my God. And I think that's how he wants us to be. If I was a little more out in the country, I might have a little garden growing, and things like that. So. Oh,
yes, and you'd love it, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe a couple of chickens are laying eggs, and amen.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. And Brian, I think maybe it's not a bad idea for us to weigh up for a few minutes the advantages and disadvantages of city life and country life. Just put them on the scale just for a few minutes.
Sure, that is a good idea.
City life does have advantages, of course. I mean, everything is close. It's convenient. You have close neighbours. Mm-hmm. Disadvantages? Well, we've got noise, pollution, fumes, traffic, crime. We're crammed like sardines into a small living area. Okay, that's city life. Now, country life. It's got some disadvantages. The man-made attractions are not as convenient. The neighbours are further away. It takes longer for emergency services to show up. That's all true. Those are disadvantages for country life.
Yeah.
It does have advantages, though. You've got wide open spaces. You're not crammed against your neighbours. You can do what you want to. It's quiet, no traffic, no pollution, a safer environment with very low or no crime rate, and something else, closer community relationships, because in the country, that is what happens automatically. It's also stress-free. And when you weigh it all, country living does offer a very high quality of life, the highest quality of life.
Wow.
And I was interested the other day when I come across a research that confirmed that everything else being equal, people who live in the country actually have a 2 years longer life expectancy on average.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
Which is rather interesting.
That is.
And it's worth considering that soon the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. And in rural districts where the houses are not crowded closely together, people will be more easily free from the interference of enemies. And apart from the raising of fruit and vegetables and hens with their nice organic eggs and so on, the children, actually, their minds will be focused more on the works of God in nature, which does actually build beautiful character.
Yes. Amen. That's a good point. I had not ever done a direct comparison. I just know that I'm not really a city person. I did live in Seoul, Korea when I was in the Army for a couple of years. And I can remember whenever I would open the windows on my apartment that the noise and the fumes were so severe. The noise just from the city buses and the cars was so bad that my cat would run and hide and shake. She was just scared of the noise, and so it was bad. It was, and a lot of fumes, even from the vehicles. So I can remember running. There was a main post and a south post. The base was split by a thoroughway, a regular stop-and-go traffic road, not a major highway. But anyway, so there was a traffic light. You'd get to the edge of one base, and if we would jog, and run our run, and we would run from one base to the other. And I can remember not wanting to breathe between the two gates because you were right there with all the fumes of the vehicles stopped. And this was in the 90s, and maybe the vehicles were not as well maintained and such, and low emissions as we have now. But I can distinctly remember trying not to breathe as we went from one gate to the other. I'd take a breath we were at the light, I'd take a breath, and then we'd go across, and then when I got to the other side, I'd start breathing again. It was the way I took my morning jogs, back in the day. But when
great memory.
Oh yeah, it is. It's something to fall back on. When money collapses, though, what would be more valuable even than silver and gold? I presume, something to eat, maybe something to drink.
Yes.
Is
when money collapses, the best thing you can have is food to barter with.
Yeah.
Money will mean nothing if there's no food, and it's really a problem. I'll get onto that, but first of all, I think I'd just like to finish off something about getting out to the haven location. I think it's a good idea to consider buying or having a safe haven place at least 2 hours away from a major city. I have two friends who have both big mortgages, and they'll not be able to pay them off if the economy collapses, which means they'll lose their homes anyway in the coming economic collapse, and that seems that it is on its way sometime without too much delay.
Mm-hmm.
And the advice for them would be to buy a motorhome as soon as possible and have it stocked and ready to go. Just pray and ask God to show you where He wants you to go, when He wants you to leave, and have a safe plan.
Yeah.
For example, if one's a Christian, the ideal is to find a Christian friend who already lives in the country and who owns their property free and clear with no bank mortgage, who will let you park your motorhome there. And if one can't afford a motorhome, then have a tent, a small tent. Find a friend who will let you move in with them on their property with your tent.
Yeah.
And have a small pack ready with essentials. Okay,
that's good advice. I'm writing it down.
Now, getting to, I'd just like to say a little bit more about water, Brian. I think perhaps it's important that we do this.
Okay, sure.
As we mentioned earlier, it makes sense that if one moves to the country, they should choose a property close to a natural water supply. But if that's not possible, how could they ensure for themselves and their family an adequate, reliable supply of clean water? Because that's going to be the number one essential after fresh air. Well, can I suggest a good filtration system? One that has white ceramic filters rather than the black ones.
Oh, yeah?
The white ones, apparently, are much easier to clean and so will last longer than the black ones. That's the reason why.
Are you talking about like a Catadin filter?
Yes, something like that. Now, did you know that you could get water from air? And that could eliminate the need for carrying and hauling a lot if you have to move. Now, there's a couple of things I can think of. A small generator to provide with electricity just in case the mainstream power supply fails. But your generator should have the capability to run on propane as well as gasoline, because propane will store indefinitely. It's also less likely to be destroyed by devastating events that come. Propane tanks are quite sturdy. They can be stored underground even, quite safely.
Yes.
But more importantly, more than electricity is a humidifier to extract distilled water from the air.
Interesting.
Now,
so yes, if you have a humidifier, it grabs the air and collects it in that thing. And then most people just dump it. I remember we used to have them. We would dump the water out all the time, or was that a dehumidifier? Is that what we're talking about?
We're talking about a dehumidifier.
Dehumidifier. That's when it takes the water out of the air. Okay.
That is right.
That's
yes.
what we need.
It will extract purified distilled water from the air.
Okay.
And the best type of dehumidifier, the best type would be to purchase a 5-gallon per day one rather than a larger 9-gallon per day. And the reason is, if electricity becomes a problem, the ability to generate enough electricity would be an issue.
Yes, I see your point there, but it would be definitely worth using some of your electric power to get some of that water to drink. But that is something I had never heard in all of the times I've had preppers on and different things.
And you can always shut it off, Brian, when you need a drink, then restart it.
Yeah, that's true.
And you should also consider how many people would have to use the water that you're getting from it.
Yes.
Now, just think about this. If commercial power does go dead, you will only have a precious limited supply of electric power from your electric generator or a battery-powered inverter. And this means that the larger 9-gallon dehumidifier may not operate. Firstly, because its power demand is greater than the power that the generator or the inverter might supply. And secondly, even if you buy a high-powered generator or inverter, your fuel source, natural gas or propane gas or solar to battery or wind to battery, will be quite limited. And this means that the dehumidifier cannot be powered for long enough periods to produce enough water, while a little, say 340-watt dehumidifier will more likely produce the water you need to survive with. So it's worth thinking about the size.
Yes, that's true. That is true. I'm gonna highlight that. I've never heard anybody say to buy a dehumidifier for a water source, but that's ingenious for people that don't live near any kind of a freshwater source. Then they need to have a plan, and that may be the best plan.
I do believe so, yes. The smaller the electrical load you place upon your generator or your inverter, the longer you can produce the, whatever it is, 4 or 5 gallons of water a day to sustain life for an average-sized family. But to go for the more reliable 4 to 5 gallons a day, that would keep the family alive. I've got a friend actually he's over here in New Zealand. He's designed his installation so as to use a very small generator, which can keep his batteries charged so that the inverter never runs low enough to shut off the power supply. So I thought that was rather neat.
So he does what? The generator generates electricity to a battery, and then the inverter brings the electricity to be used? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. These are things we have to give some more thought to.
Should be borne in mind also that as temperature drops, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, these are things we have to give thought to. Tell me how he sets that up, that generator. I mean, what is it? Is it a propane or a gas generator, or is it solar?
He's using gas, yeah.
Okay. And then how does he make it to go further? He has something to catch the energy?
What he does, yeah. He just uses this very small generator. He charges up his batteries, and he can use the generator to directly run the inverter or the humidifier itself, and that gives him multiple options.
Okay.
Now, as the temperature of the ambient air drops, it will take the dehumidifier longer to fill the tank. That's something that shouldn't be a worry if we understand what's happening there. The temperature drops, it does take longer.
Because there's not as much humidity,
it takes longer in winter than it would in summer.
Sure. That's all good. Man, that's some interesting stuff. So how do we survive without money in this instance, Jonathan? Do we just go to a barter system?
Yes, we go to a barter system, and maybe we should concentrate a little bit on that one, because the food is going to be the best money that you can ever have to survive with.
Yeah.
When all the money is gone, or if people don't have money, and if you don't have money, you can survive, and that will be possible, no question at all. The survival would be, I would suggest that people start thinking about what is going to be in greatest demand. What food supply would be the food supply that would keep you going longest? Well, maybe I should get back to the sprouts idea again. I think that's something that is worth talking about a little bit more. But if anyone doesn't like drinking water, Brian, I think they need to start drinking. My wife has been operating a natural remedy clinic over here in New Zealand for several years, a health clinic, and people are getting well just on water.
Oh,
I mean, after all, the body is mostly water.
I could give you a testimony as close as my wife to me from the other room to here. My wife used to drink about 10 or 12 Diet Pops a day and no water, and now she drinks no Diet Pops and drinks a lot of water and teas and coffee, but everything is water-based. But she actually drinks bottled water. I mean, she never for years drank water, and now she does, and she is 100 times healthier. I mean, she's gained 30 pounds.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She was in very bad health for quite a while, and so there's my testimony. But you go ahead and tell me what your wife is doing. We've only got a couple minutes. We got a couple minutes before the break, but go ahead and tell me.
Well, that's beautiful. Well, what I'd like to say is this may help to help us to remember what we're talking about. Back in Iran, after the revolutionary government took over, various people were rounded up for execution, and there was a doctor thrown into prison. Yeah. And in the prison, fellow prisoners were brought to him because he was a doctor, suffering severe pain. There was one particular man, and he decided that the cause was an ulcer. Had no medicine, and suddenly the thought came to him, and he advised the patient to drink 2 glasses of water. Well, within a couple of minutes, the man reported he was feeling better already. So the doctor kept giving him doses of water every 20 minutes, and after 12 hours, he was relieved of pain. Now, the doctor thought that was a miracle, and to the surprise of everyone, he started treating others who were getting sick, and the diseases responded to this unusual treatment. And then when his case came up to court, the charges against him were so serious that the death penalty was faced. But the judge asked why he should not be sentenced to death, and the doctor presented the results of his work in the prison. So the judge said, all right, I'm freeing you on condition that you work for the government and use water in your treatments, and that's how this was discovered.
And your wife actually does medical health using water as the main medicine. Wow.
Water is the best medicine of all, yes.
What about aromatherapy? Is that what they call it, where you're bathing and soaking in water? Does she recommend that kind of thing as well for arthritis and osteoporosis?
I haven't heard her speak about aromatherapy, but I understand that she believes there's some merit in it.
Or aquatherapy, I'm not sure what they call that, where you get into a body of water periodically. And I heard the other day even that salt water from the ocean can heal psoriasis. I don't know.
Oh, yes. Salt water is absolutely wonderful. During World War II, when the Japanese were coming across the Pacific, some American Marines were trapped on an island a couple of thousand miles above us here. And they hid from the Japanese invaders behind some rocks out on the reef, and they were there for a couple of weeks till they got rescued and they had no food left. Yeah. And so there was a doctor among them. He got them to soak their bodies for a certain time every day in water to soak up the moisture, and then to take 1 teaspoonful of straight seawater as food every day.
Wow.
When they were examined on board the ship, they were examined by doctors after they were rescued. They were found, every one of them, to be in perfect health.
Wow, that's truly amazing. Wow. Well, we are at the 7 o'clock mark. So what we're going to do, Jonathan, is take a short break, probably 3 or 4 minutes, and you can get a little refreshing, and we'll be back for the second hour. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. The second hour of Revelation Per Minute.
In that day they were first. There is coming a day when the bridegroom is taken away, and in that day they will mourn. In that day they will fast, and they will say that things as they are not okay. When someone is missing, someone is absent, yeah, they will say things as they are not okay. When someone is missing, someone is absent. There is coming a day when the bridegroom is taken away.
Hey folks, Radio Preacher Man for Self-Reliance. These are hard times, and it could get harder. You've seen the droughts, you've seen the floods nationwide, worldwide even. So 7 billion people got to eat, so don't be left out with nothing to eat. Get yourself some victuals put back on the shelf. Now I got a product I want to tell you about. It's called Shelf Reliance, and this is good food. You can use it on a regular basis. Get you some dehydrated food, and you got some easy prep meats. They got vegetables and fruits dehydrated, ready to eat as a snack, or you can reconstitute them for your cooking needs. You can get grains, bread, milk, eggs. It's a full line of food products, even dessert, such as ice cream and fudge brownies. Hello. So check it out at radiopreacherman.shelfreliance.com. That's radiopreacherman.shelfreliance.com. It's also a wonderful business opportunity for those of you looking to do something with your lives on the side, or instead of being unemployed, or whatever your situation is, brothers and sisters.
Things are not okay right now. Oh, things are not okay right now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Things are not okay right now. Jesus, things are not okay right now. Things are not okay right now. Things are not okay right now. Things are not okay, and they won't be till you come back. No, they won't be till you come back. No, they won't be till you come back. No, they won't be till you come back.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Revelations Per Minute for the second hour. We have tonight with us Jonathan Gray. He's an archaeologist, author, and lecturer, and he's traveled the world to gather data on the ancient mysteries, penetrating some largely unexplored areas, we might say, including parts of the Amazon headwaters. And so the man's been around, and his findings include much evidence about Egyptians, Phoenicians in the Americas, remains of ancient giants on a remote Pacific island of the Egyptian chariot parts, and there's so much the man has done. But tonight,
and he's written a couple of books. I'll go ahead and mention The Forbidden Secret again, which we discussed on a show about a week and a half ago. It's called The Forbidden Secret, Charting Your Rescue from the New World Order. And tonight's topic kind of goes along with that, as another work of his called Will You Survive? The biosphere deteriorates, new deadly diseases emerge, war escalates, starvation looms for millions, and now the worldwide economy collapses. So the key is, will you survive? And we had Jonathan on in the first hour, and we discussed quite a bit of this material, and we're going to discuss a little further what to do when and if, or if more than when, or when more than if, I guess, is the common saying nowadays when things do happen. And we want to avoid a panic and try to survive without our normal means of a job and cash and electricity and all the things that we've come accustomed to having. So with that said, let's get back on track with young Jonathan. We were talking before the break also about natural healing remedies and using water to heal yourself of many ailments and diseases. And I guess, Jonathan, on that note, fasting would go well with that, or was you implying that you basically drink only water? Were you implying a fast in that scenario?
Well, what I was implying was that water should take top priority even over food in an emergency that may last a few days. Don't forget the water. Okay. You were telling me something interesting about your dear wife, and maybe I can just add something to that, Brian, if I may.
Yes.
There are some people I've met who say that they drink plenty of soft drinks and coffee, and isn't that good enough? Doesn't it give them enough water? Well, now, water, in its pure state, makes no changes when taken into the body. It simply goes in, does its job, is eliminated, all in the same condition. This is not true of other drinks. A water taken in the form of colas and soft drinks, or coffee and tea, must first be filtered by the kidneys before it can be utilized in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And this can tax the kidneys and concentrates the urine. The waste stagnates and can pave the way for disease. And also there's many chemicals in these drinks which place a burden on the whole internal digestive system. Now, I love fruit juices, and even as delicious as fruit juices are, and as good as they might be for you, even they should be taken in moderation, because they're very concentrated fruits. Some are very high in sugar and are taxing on the kidneys.
Yeah.
There's really no substitute for pure soft water. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think that's good advice, Jonathan. In fact, I've got a habit, and you may have seen me drinking this, but I have a habit of taking my water, and I'll drink it down a little bit, about halfway, and then I'll pour juice in there to give the other half a flavor. Well, that dilutes the juice and gives the water some flavor, but if I would just not drink the juice and just drink the water, it'd probably be so much better for me, eh?
Oh yes. Well, this morning my wife put a little lemon in a pitcher of cool water, and it made the normal tap water quite pleasant to drink. So if a person isn't used to it, maybe a little bit of fruit juice wouldn't go wrong.
Okay, well, it's better than not drinking water, but maybe I should take it to the next level, as you just mentioned, and put a touch of lemon juice in there instead of the concentrated. This is some drink, what do they call it? It's a kid's drink. It's an orange drink, and it was very, very cheap. And can't quite place the name. Probably not good to mention it on the air anyway. But it's not probably the greatest thing to pour in my water because it's high calories and high sugar level. So I think this is a wonderful idea, a touch of lemon juice, folks. Amen, in the water to give it that little bit of flavor. Good idea, Jonathan.
Yeah, and it's very, very pleasant. Very pleasant. Now, you know how we often think we're hungry? And a lot of people think they have to eat because they're hungry. I want to throw something else in for what it might be worth, Brian. Often when we think we're feeling hunger pangs, it's only water that the body is crying out for. The body is not really hungry at all. It's just thirsty. Mm-hmm. And might I recommend that anyone who's listening, just try it. Drink a glass or two and just see how your hunger disappears.
Interesting. I've heard that before as well. And I'll be honest, sometimes I have a habit of today, okay, for instance, I was writing a paper all day, and I had eaten a bowl of oatmeal, and I was quite contented. And then after a few hours of writing and researching, and I went and got something to eat, and I wasn't even hungry. So that's another topic, but that's, what do you call it, eating out of boredom or comfort food because I was nervous trying to write this paper or whatever the case may be. This is probably, that and coupled with not enough water is probably the reason most Americans are a little overweight.
And most New Zealanders here too, and Australians.
Yeah, I know. It's not only this country, but we're like the king of obesity right now on a scale from the world, you know, around the globe. And I'm trying to lose that last 5 pounds. And I think your advice on that...
As a matter of fact, I'm just going to give you a little secret, because you can't see what I'm doing here, but while you were just saying what you just said, Brian, I picked up a glass of water, which I had with me all the time, and I forgot to drink, and I just finished it.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well,
I feel good, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like water just fine. I don't even have to flavor it. It just makes it more interesting, I guess, and it becomes a habit to put the juice in the water. But I may either I could even cut way back on how much juice I put in and maybe have more water to juice in the ratio, and it would still have some flavor, you know. As far as those little packets of flavoring that you can put in water, those I would presume are bad for you because they're oftentimes either full of sugar or aspartame.
Yeah, so the less sugar we take in, the better we are, unless it's natural sugar, such as in fruit and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we...
honey is good. There's nothing wrong with honey. It doesn't have the same effect as sugar, but it is a lovely sweet thing to have. And honey is the only food, actually. This is one of the good things to store. Honey is the only food that does not go off.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Honey is good to store as well. And it doesn't affect your sugar level as badly. Is that correct?
No, that's very true. I guess we're getting now onto the food. Maybe we should spend a little time on what should we store and how should we store it, Brian, in such emergencies.
Yes. Okay, that's fine to do as well. What is your...
You know, in the book of Proverbs, in Proverbs it talks about a little creature called the ant. It says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief, officer, or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provisions in the harvest." So even the tiny little ant is very, very good at storing its food for the time it's going to need it.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, our ancestors were very wise. They had a lot of common sense. They had cellars where they had food canned that would last them well over a year. And this was a fact. They're quite common back then, ensuring they'd be able to plant a crop the following summer and still be able to survive waiting for the crops to mature and harvest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, I do know this. The media won't touch this with a 10-foot pole, Brian, but the time of easily accessible food at cheap prices may soon be over. The next year, food should be rocketing in price compared with this year.
Yes.
I don't know if you've noticed the prices already starting to go up.
Yes, I have, Jonathan. Mm-hmm. I sure have, because we buy the same thing all the time. Yeah. And I've noticed what used to be 2 for $4 is now typically 2 for $5 when it's on sale. You know, it used to be 2 for $4 or buy one, get one free. Now it's 2 for $5, so you're essentially paying more by quite a bit. That's when it's on sale.
Yeah, that's happening.
Yes.
Yeah. it's best actually to plan ahead by putting together a supply of items to store well for a long time, such as canned goods, freeze-dried foods, vacuum-packed food, and things like that. And don't forget toiletries and other essentials. And if a person needs prescription medicines, they should be getting a few of those in as well if they depend on them, because these things are going to be difficult soon.
Yes, that's another thing.
If we do not have 6 months to a year's food in reserve, then it would, and if you don't have the money, it'd be best to sell something or do whatever you have to start getting ready so that yourself and your family can feel safer. Or better still, if you can store 2 years' supply at this time, do it as soon as possible. Now, we've already talked about country and moving to country and so on, but this would apply to everybody, whether you move or stay in the city. A couple of years' supply would be the ideal, and start doing it pretty soon if possible. Another thing would be to prepare and enjoy simple foods. Learn to survive without doctors, without lawyers, without police, without government handouts and interference. And if you're like most folks, and you haven't prepared enough for the things you know, then now's the time I think we've all got to start thinking and doing it.
Yes, sir.
Question that comes up to me would be, is storing food hoarding? Could you call it hoarding? Because, a lot of us have an aversion against hoarding stuff. Every time I move house, I think I've hoarded stuff that I don't need. I have to throw it out. Is storing food like that? No, I don't think so. Does preparation negate faith? I've heard it argued that preparing anything is foolishness and shows a lack of faith, and they say, shouldn't one put one's trust in God? And there are others who scorn the idea of preparing anything as though it's a paranoia. And there are others who are asking serious questions about how can I do it realistically. Now, it's true that the greatest need for preparation is spiritual, which I know you agree with, Brian, instead of physical. I totally agree with that. Give me a man who's prepared all the food, all the water, all the shelter he'll need, and who loses heart because he doesn't have God. You've got a dead man. But give me a man with nothing physical prepared who keeps faith in God, and you've got a survivor. And it may be helpful to recognize that has to come first. But the food preparation we should still be sensible about.
Yes, hearkening back to what we talked about in the first hour, if you're in a situation where you're forced into the woods to try to get around and, to try to survive, and all you got your little backpack of bug-out equipment and whatnot, you better have God, because you don't know who or what you're going to meet out in the woods. There could be, animals, there could be other people. So we are ultimately in the hands of God, just to throw that out. He can provide circumstances where you're not in the wrong place at the wrong time, and sometimes where you're in the right place at the right time to get a helping hand if you need one. If you don't have water, you might bump into somebody out in the woods who's got an extra bottle of water, and it might save your life. So God is ultimately our provision, So that is the key thing that you were bringing up, Jonathan, and I like that. But let's...
yes.
I'll let you get back to what you were...
There's a couple of statements that I like. One's in the Psalms, the other's in Proverbs, and perhaps it's not a bad idea to share them. David said in the Psalms, I've been young and now I'm old, yet I've not seen the righteous, to the right living person, forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. And that's very comforting. It's good to know.
Yes.
But we need to cooperate with him. Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Now, it's true that the Lord can look after us, but he does tell us, as Jesus said to the Christians back there in Jerusalem, when the time comes, get out and do what I tell you, and they did. So there's a cooperation here between our God and ourselves, and if that cooperation is done wisely, we have nothing to fear.
Interesting. Now I was going to say, what
in the book
food?
Of Genesis,
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, go ahead. If you were still in the Bible, I'm down with that.
Yes. In the book of Genesis, there's a survival food plan that I believe offers up-to-date advice to us. And it comes all from those early times of Noah and then Joseph. The story of Noah is a good example of preparation. Noah built, he knew the trouble was coming. He built the survival vessel as God instructed him to provide refuge, and food, and deliverance from the flood. Now, the story of Joseph is another good example, which can help us. Mm-hmm. Now, in the time of Joseph received information in a dream, and he advised the Pharaoh. He said, there's coming 7 years of plenty throughout the land of Egypt, and after that's coming 7 years of famine. Yeah. And so he said, prepare for it. And so they prepared for it. I've been down into Cairo there to Saqqara, which is a very interesting spot. And there's a building, when you go there, it goes back to the time of Joseph. And as you go in the main hallway, on either side there are pillars. And the pillars are shaped like an ear of corn. Each pillar that holds up the roof is shaped like an ear of corn.
Aye, cool.
And between the pillars there are little cubicles where somebody must have sat and taken money or taken coupons or vouchers or something, and then given the people permission to go out and get their corn. And you go out there, and then in the ground there's 13 big, deep pits. And when these pits were opened in modern times, they were found to contain little bits of grain still in them. So we know that these were grain pits. And they're linked to Joseph, who gave orders to prepare for the time of trouble. So we've got an example there.
Oh, I could give you one too, Jonathan. When I was in Israel, there was they have this huge place that I think it was at Masada, that they had like huge rooms hewn out of rock that were actually storehouses where they would store different grains and different foods and different supplies that they were going to need to feed the military. And there was enough to feed an army in there, for probably a year or two. Just huge, huge rooms. And they actually found under some debris, they were moving rocks that had fallen, like the roofs had fallen in, so most of the roofs they had moved away. But they found a seed to, I think it was a date tree. And this was thousands of years old by now, and they planted that, and it grew into a tree. Isn't that amazing? So that's isn't that amazing? After all this long time, the life was still in it. That's God's provision, His ability to provide. Yes. That's just an example. We don't. I'm not saying don't prepare. I think I'm a believer in being prepared. As you just mentioned, Noah and Joseph. But God is able. God is our provision. He is our source. Amen. More so than anything else. Absolutely. More so than our job. Amen, as my pastor always said. So. Oh yes. Now, what kind of foods should we not be storing? I'm led to wonder. Oh, that's a good question. Okay, there's two types of food we should not waste our money on for storing. Mm-hmm. Shop-bought foods that are not freeze-dried do not last long. That's one. Yeah. Another is forget about unhealthy food. During an emergency, having enough snacks won't increase the odds of survival. So snack foods that have a lot of sugar and so on, just for sweet tasting, forget about them. Okay. Now, let's get on to the positive. What are some of the best foods we could stock up on? Yeah. Foods that last. And we should be looking at shelf life, bulk price, and nutrition. Those three things are important, nutritional content. Uh-huh. And it would be wise to store foods that do not require refrigeration or freezing, because if we lose the electricity, we lose the food. Yes, I agree with you there. Now, what type of food? Okay.
this should be considered. Large sacks of rice, large sacks of beans.
Mm-hmm.
Now, grains, any type of grain, beans, and as we did mention, honey, will last a long time.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
we'll just start stocking up from the grocery store, yeah. Canned food is good for 18 to 24 months. And perhaps we should list a few other options, though, because in their food storage planning, some people will consider a non-flesh diet as preferable. And for those used to meat, some suggestions we can give, but it's necessary to mention that as this crisis develops, meat will become less desirable because contamination can... We've had examples sometimes in state of emergency where flesh actually becomes corrupted, and that's a sad thing, but we have to be careful, and maybe we have to change our way of eating in emergency.
Yes.
Okay, now here's some top packaged foods that will have an indefinite shelf life. Raw peanut butter in jars. That's a very good food to store. Peanut butter or almond butter or sesame tahini will provide many recipes and a concentrated protein source that's very easy to prepare. So butters, nut butters, raw nut butters in jars. That's one very... When
you say raw, you mean like a natural peanut butter versus like Jif? Or what are you meaning by raw peanut butter?
Yes. If you can get it, there's a shop here it's one of my favourites. So they have a little machine, and at the top of the machine there's a big bucket of peanuts, and you can see it's transparent. And you turn on the switch, and it starts coming down a chute, and you put a container underneath it, and you fill up the container and take it home. It's so beautiful to taste as well, just totally natural.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, that would be good, I'm sure, because I'm a fan of peanut butter. So, but any kind of peanut butter is better than no peanut butter.
One of my kind.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, something else is canned tomatoes.
Yeah.
Canned tomatoes can be used to make homemade pasta and pizza sauce along with chili, so that food doesn't become boring. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure, you're right.
Canned beans. Yeah. Having cans of black beans or red beans or chili beans or garbanzo beans close by will give some variety to sources of protein.
Yes.
When you serve them with rice. And in some countries, you can get them in large 25-ounce cans or even 108-ounce cans. I don't know what size they are in America, but cans of these would be well worth stocking up on.
Okay, we'll have to...
Now, they have an almost indefinite shelf life, the nut butters, the canned tomatoes, and canned beans. So they're probably the best to start with. Now, there are other top protein sources that should be stored that have a 6 to 12-month shelf life. And we could mention there split peas, lentils, legumes in general, grains, which would include barley, brown rice, buckwheat, millet, oatmeal, rye, wheat, and so on. Or we could go to vegetable protein, which would include just about any kind of vegetable you like to name, beets and broccoli and Brussels and cabbage and cauliflower, cucumbers, mushrooms, watercress, whatever. Now, there's also protein in fruits. You take apples and bananas, cantaloupes, grapes, oranges, papaya and peach and pineapple, strawberry, watermelon, tangerine. They all contain good proteins.
Okay.
And if we're still talking about proteins, why not go to nuts and seeds? Virtually all the nuts and seeds have good protein in them. And depending upon where you live, you get a selection, or depending upon your taste. And all of those good foods have a shelf life of about 12 to up to 12 months, 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
Now, there are some grains that would have a 2-year shelf life. Maybe I should just mention a few of those.
Sure.
Brown rice, a staple grain. It's cheaper than white rice, and it's more nutritious. And for some people, it may not taste as good because if you're not used to it, it's an acquired taste, but it's a good food. It's not a junk food.
Mm-hmm.
And a blend of brown and white rice is perhaps the ideal for most people, for both health and flavour.
Okay.
Now, spelt flour. I'm not sure about spelt in America, whether people go for that, but having the ingredients to make bread dough will allow for many recipes. But it's important to keep flour sealed in watertight containers to keep out moisture and keep out insects.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then there's couscous, which we rather like. Another high-protein survival grain. Couscous. It's a South American grain, and the first time I ever tasted it was in North Carolina. We've been visiting some friends. I'd never tasted it on this side of the world, but now we're buying it in the supermarkets here. It's spelled C-O-U, C-O-U-S again. It's beautiful, lovely tasting grain.
I have heard of it.
Dried peas, we did mention. Yeah, well, I'd never heard of it. And our friends, the fellow was coming with me on one of my expeditions, so we went over to his home over there in North Carolina, and we spent a few days there, and his wife, she was a beautiful cook. She brought out the couscous, and we just loved it. And I said to my wife, why don't we see if we can get it back in Australia, because we were living there then. And so now we're having it all the time. It's great stuff.
Cool deal.
Popcorn. So popcorn, kids would love that too. But popcorn sealed in airtight containers will preserve its freshness and keep out bugs.
Okay.
Okay, there's just a few ideas. Now, something that's important, however, before storing grains is the bugs, rats, and mice no good food.
Okay.
And among 100 bags of white rice, they'll always attack the one bag of brown rice. You know, that's how our bread came to be so popular in the white form, white bread, because it was commercial necessity to keep out the bugs. And so they would not attack in the bread factories, they would not attack the white bread or the white flour. They'd only attack the wholemeal or the brown. So that's why white bread and white flour became so popular, a commercial necessity in the early days.
I'll be.
Not a nutritional benefit.
That's interesting. Now, if you have, say, like lentils and dried beans, you know, the little bags of beans.
Yes.
I'm not sure, but don't you soak them overnight or something before you cook them or something? Is there something? I heard that somewhere. I don't know how to prepare such a thing, but you know what I mean, like a bag of lentils or something like that. Are you supposed to soak them overnight in water?
It's a very good idea to do that. Yes. The trouble is if they're not soaked and the water drained off, they can become very gassy after you eat them. You can experience a lot of gas.
Oh, so the soaking
and it does
helps with the gas.
Soak them, and then throw away the water and then cook them.
And how do you cook them? Do you cook them in like a slow cooker?
Oh, a slow cooker is good, yes. Right. People have different ways of doing that. But make sure that they're soaked first overnight. Your suggestion is a good one. You've got that right. And I'd go along with that all the way. My wife, actually, if she heard me saying this, she'll be delighted. I've learned something from her.
It seemed like I heard that somewhere, but I hadn't heard why, and now I have a good reason why, because I don't. Now, and you can, you cook them, you put them back in water to cook them in a slow cooker, I assume. You wouldn't want to cook them without water, they'd just burn up. So you want to cover them in water.
In a slow cooker with water. That is right, yeah.
Okay.
Now, before storing, it's always good to heat brown rice to kill any bugs and eggs that might be there, and then put it into airtight containers until you're ready to use it.
Oh, before
storing it.
Heat it first?
Yeah. Heat the brown rice before you store it in airtight containers.
Oh, how do you heat it? You take it out of the bag and heat it, and then put it in like a Tupperware
Yeah.
dish? When you say heat it, you mean like
that's
just
right.
pop it in the microwave, or what do you mean by heat it?
So pop it in the oven. Yeah, let it warm up a bit.
And then it will still store.
Just to get rid of bugs and eggs, because you never know, if they're invisible, they'll destroy it before you're ready to open it. If you trap them inside the container, they'll do their hungry job there on it. You want to get rid of that possibility before putting them into the container.
Wow, that's interesting.
Because eggs may not be visible, and yet they might still be in it when you buy them from the shop. That's the reason why.
Uh-huh. And then I'm taking notes.
Well, certainly, we want to make sure that after we go to all the trouble of buying food and then storing it and transporting it, that we've got food that's going to be there for us by the time we want to eat it, eh?
Yes, sir. I agree with you on that. So we want to store...
if you have grains... I beg your pardon?
Yeah, we want to store it in an airtight container.
Yeah.
Such as Tupperware, I assume, or something that's got a good
something
snap.
like that, yeah.
Okay.
We've bought quite a few from a warehouse here that sells all sorts of things, and they've got some great airtight containers. We bought ourselves a few dozen of them because we want to store, not just 1 month's supply of food. We're looking ahead.
Okay.
Now, if you have grains and you want to make bread from the grains, you'll need some kind of mill. Now, that's a dilemma for us in our 21st century because our generation, as I think you'll agree, Brian, is techno-modern trained, and we don't even know how to mill and make bread, so this might be worth learning.
No.
Something that we could learn and get to know before any emergency arrives. And preparation is not just what to get, but also what to do with it after you get it.
Yeah.
So,
you're right.
If we buy large sacks of rice and beans, repackaging them in double-bagged plastic bags would be a good idea. Say gallon-sized bags with the twist ties. The bags with the twist ties would be cheapest, and then put them in these plastic bags full of the grains. Put them in a plastic storage bin. Now, what would be a useful thing is I don't know what you call that there, but over here we call there's a kind of earth you can get at the gardening centres. It's called a diatomaceous earth, and sprinkle that around the bags. And when you put each bag in the main storage bin, sprinkle this diatomaceous earth around the bags inside it, and that will kill any bugs that might be still straying. It will also kill the bugs in your garden, so it's not a bad thing to go to the garden centre and ask them for it. It's a kind of earth that will kill bugs anyway.
Diatomaceous earth. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that term. That I can remember.
So the idea is to get these gallon-sized bags with a twist tie, fill them up with grain, pop several of them to fill up a storage bin, and sprinkle the diatomaceous earth between the bags. Yeah.
Wow. So even in your storage, you're going to have dirt between the bags. Now, my wife ain't going to go for that, to be honest. She doesn't like dirt anywhere near us, so how am I going to convince her that I need to bring this dirt inside the house? I guess I'll have to have her listen to this broadcast. Maybe she is in the other room.
Well, I'm sure your wife, when she sees the reason for it, will be quite happy to let you do that, Brian.
Yeah, maybe so.
I'm sure that will go okay.
And it would be inside of a plastic container. It's not going to be just sprinkled on the floor in the kitchen or something,
That's right. It'll be clean.
Yes. Okay.
Now,
marvelous.
Just in case anyone's wondering, Brian, the plastic storage bins are available from farmers' suppliers in various countries, and I would think that the United States, any farmers' suppliers who supply farmers would have these storage bins you can pick up quite cheaply.
Okay. Now, are you talking like a big trash can type storage bin or something else?
I'm talking about something a bit smaller, but in that general direction of size, yeah, about as wide as that. We've got some that be about 2/3 the size of a rubbish, a garbage disposal container. But anything that can take half a dozen, maybe half a dozen 1 gallon size bags inside it, anything like that size is a reasonable handling size to carry around and put into place in a storage area. And keep these bins in a place where they'll freeze during the winter and be in the heat in the summer.
Really?
If that's possible.
Freeze during the winter? You want them to freeze?
It's not essential, but in the winter, be very cold, and in the summer, be in the heat, because this will freeze out and boil the weevils out. If they're contained within the container between the plastic bags. That's what I'm saying. It's just an extra precaution, but...
And it won't hurt the grains to have them, like in the garage or something like that.
It won't hurt the grains at all. No,
Okay.
It won't hurt the grains at all, but it will hurt the weevils and bugs.
That's interesting. Okay. Store grains. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm writing as we go.
Something else that may be helpful.
Yes.
It's a good idea to store the grains. I mean, it should be done. Store grains in sealed containers, whether they be jars or whether they be bins. Otherwise, they'll become a host to bugs, because good food will attract bugs.
Oh, yeah.
Now, something else that may be useful is to place a bay leaf inside each container. A bay leaf will also protect the contents against bugs.
Wow. A bay leaf. I don't know if I've ever had one of those. Interesting.
Your wife will know what a bay leaf is. I think they might sell them in health food shops or even in grocery shops. Bay leaves.
Okay.
They come in little containers, like where you have herbs or
Okay, yeah, like the little herbs.
And so on.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
I mean, you can actually put them in food to spice food or something, right?
Oh yeah, that's
Okay.
right. And they're very nice. They go nicely in soups and things.
Okay, I know what they are now. Sure, you're right. It just took me a minute. I guess I don't cook much.
Well, you have your job, and your dear wife has her own special role, which is always so important. When
yes.
you finish your job, she's done hers, and you're sitting down to enjoy it.
Yes. I reckon that's right. Now, my mother is quite the cook. She makes her own noodles, by scratch, rolls them out, cuts them and frees them, and all kind, so she can make beef and noodles all year. She's got it. Yeah, she was a farm girl, raised on a farm, so she knows a bit about these things, canning and whatnot. And I keep threatening I'm going to go and stay with her for a few days and learn something, but I never seem to get it done,
Yes, I understand that.
Should have paid more attention growing up, but she didn't do a lot of canning when I was growing up. She had gotten off the farm, but she definitely knows how, and she does it now since she's older. So it's a skill, some of this stuff. Yes. So, wow.
Oh, that's good.
The greatest nutrient.
Could I mention something else?
Yes.
Yeah. Could I mention something else, Brian, about containers? The containers should be sealed. You might mention plastic buckets, for example, that have a sealable lid just fitted through into them. But don't use old buckets that used to store chemicals. If some old buckets lying around that had chemicals in them, just forget about them. They're not good to store food in.
Right. I have actually bought some buckets over the years that had lids. I don't have very many, though. But that type of bucket, and you put the lid on it, but how do you get that lid down tight? I don't know. I know I had a tool at one time to take the lid off. I'm not as organized as I used to be. You know, I've kind of, we've moved a couple of times, and I don't seem to know where some of my things are. I hate to say.
Brian, you should meet one of my friends. The dear lady has moved 8 times in a year.
Oh, my. So she wouldn't know where
and no, she told us that she never has time. This last year it was. She said she never had time to fully unpack when they're up again and had to repack. How would you like to be having to do that?
Oh, I don't think so.
I won't tell you why this happened, but it's a fact of life. We've got to know her pretty well, and 8 times. We thought 6 times was enough, then she moved twice more.
And what was the reason for so many moves? Was it for economic reasons?
Oh, it had to do with a member of the family who was a little bit dissatisfied with each house they went to.
Oh, okay.
Without going into a long story, but just imagine being in that position, eh?
Yes, I wouldn't like it that many times in a year. It would just be a little bit much. You wouldn't know where to go to after work. You'd be like, "Oh, I'm at the wrong house." But you'd probably have to think about it every day for a while. But
this is where thinking ahead is always a better idea, isn't it, than being caught suddenly?
Yes. And so, how can we cut down on our food costs, I guess, and still eat well?
Okay, the best way to cut down on food costs is to grow your own food.
Okay.
And we did mention about sprouting. Now, maybe for people who don't know how to sprout seeds, I should just mention something here.
Mm-hmm.
Moisture and warmth, and in most cases indirect sunlight, are necessary for sprouting. Now, some sprouts, such as mung beans, can be grown in the dark, just under your kitchen cupboard, under the sink. And It doesn't take much time or effort or space to make sprouts. First, the seeds are moistened. You put them on a tray. Leave them at room temperature in a sprouting vessel or a tray. The best way is to get a platform of gauze or muslin over a bowl and cover it with a layer of seeds to be sprouted. And then after wetting the seeds, place it in a kitchen cupboard or on a bench. Then splash water over the seeds or onto the muslin or gauze 2 or 3 times a day, just to keep the seeds moist. And after about 3 days, when each seed sprouts 2 little shoots, they're at their most powerful and ready to enjoy. And do they taste good?
Yes, I've had the sprouts in the past, but it's been quite a while. But they were great. If you get too many, you can put them in the fridge too, and they'll last a little while. Isn't that correct? Put them in a Ziploc or something.
They're a good source of protein, Brian, also, and they take less time to digest than meat. They're living food. They're alkaline. Now, meat is lifeless and acidic, and people who are suffering any sickness will find that sprouts can pick them up very quickly and help them to recover. It's wonderful. Sprouts can cut the cost of living. You were mentioning about that. And when we get into highly priced items like whatever we're buying, that the prices are going up now, sprouts can cut the cost of living. They have no additives. They have no hormones or chemicals in farming practices. They have 0 cholesterol.
Yeah.
And they're a source of oxygen.
Wow.
So there's lots of health benefits. They're also preventative medicine. You know, if you eat sprouts daily, you're providing building materials for the growth and repair of the body.
Wow. That's awesome.
So they're real superfood. Yeah. Wonderful.
I guess I better start sprouting.
Now, somebody might say, well, how am I going to prepare them? How, if I'm not used to eating sprouts, can I enjoy them? Well, a couple of ideas. One is to try maybe a mixed pea and bean sprout salad, or a salad of whatever kind of sprouts, with a normal veggie salad. Mm-hmm. Another way is to try sprout smoothies. A smoothie, I don't know what you call them over there. You may have the same name. A smoothie is a drink.
Yeah, we
Try
do.
sprout smoothies flavored with pineapple or coconut or banana.
I'll be. Okay.
And so sprouts provide us with whole foods full of living enzymes. They're really a vital life force, and they can be growing on your kitchen bench 1 minute and transferred to the meal table the next, ready for eating. There's nothing as fresh as that.
That's awesome.
There's a professor over in California, and he said that sprouted seeds and sprouted baby greens are the most beneficial foods on the planet.
Wow. So you can...
Actually, they comprise 25% of our food intake. So that was an interesting observation.
Indeed. And I think a lot of people are thinking about ways to cut the food budget right now, you know. It's the times we're living in already, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And this is going to help us reduce risk of disease and everything else, and we're going to have a healthier immune system and all those kind of things by sprouting.
Absolutely, yes. And there are several benefits that have been tested with sprouts. One is a psychological improvement.
Wow.
People have noticed they've become more compassionate and calmer under stress.
Yeah.
Protection from obesity and diabetes. Children raised on a diet, actually the diet would include a vegetarian food as well, has a much higher intake of fibre, antioxidants and minerals than flesh-eating children. So these are studies that are being made now in the world's universities. Less drug addiction, increased longevity, cheaper insurance. Did you know that in the United Kingdom, vegetarians are paying 25% less on their insurance policies because they made a survey of the length of life health benefits? And I was absolutely astonished to read that. So here we've got natural foods which have benefits that can also benefit our health and benefit our pockets.
Interesting.
And plenty of protein. So we're not short of protein. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
I get it. Remember that. Protein. I mean, who would have thought that something you grow is such a good source of protein? We always think of meat as a source of protein, and maybe nuts.
We do, don't we?
But I had not realized that sprouts would be such a good source of protein. That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, it may also surprise people who are maybe listening to discover that one person's food supply for a whole year can be grown in a small piece of ground 5 feet wide and 10 feet long. And it can have a rotating crop for the full 12 months of the year. So even in the city, why not take a little piece of ground beside the house and put a small fence around it to keep out the dogs and the cats and maybe the chickens, and then gather the old rotten leaves and grass around the house and dig this into the soil as fertilizer. Maybe if you're near the coast, add a little quantity of seawater to the soil, and you'd be surprised to discover how those 97 elements from that seawater would enrich even the poorest soil and help produce the best garden you ever had.
Wow. Interesting, my brother. This is interesting. I got to ask you real quick, I hate to, well, maybe I shouldn't. We only got a few minutes left. Maybe we shouldn't change the subject, but yeah, you've got here a recipe to fight any plague, and that just piqued my curiosity.
Okay. All right. It's a herbal recipe, Brian, and maybe I could just read it out.
Sure.
There's a lot more facts, but okay, here's the recipe. It'll fight outbreaks of any kind, such as colds, flu, and any rapid systematic infections that may come along. Write down these: black walnut concentrate, wormwood concentrate, marshmallow root concentrate, oak bark concentrate, lobelia leaf or lobelia seed concentrate,
Lobelia.
Leaf, lobelia, Lobelia, yeah.
Uh-huh. And what was the...
mullein, now that's leaf, lobelia leaf or lobelia seed concentrate. Now, this next one I'll have to spell it out because it may not be familiar. My pronunciation may be different. Mullein leaf concentrate, that's Mullein leaf. The leaf of the mullein, Mullein concentrate. Skullcap concentrate. Skullcap leaf concentrate. Hydrangea. Do you have hydrangea flowers over there? That beautiful big red, that big pink or blue flowers?
Yes.
About a foot wide?
Yes.
Hydrangea root concentrate. Now 4 ounces of each of those, 4 ounces of concentrate of the black walnut, wormwood, marshmallow root, oak bark, 4 ounces of each of those, the whole lot that we've just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Then 8 ounces of comfrey. I was ambushed by some people in Papua New Guinea, and boy, I had a big red eye that would scare any kid like out of a horror movie. And my wife treated my eye with comfrey root concentrate.
What was that?
A comfrey, it's Comfrey. It's a common plant. It has a rather big leaf. Comfrey, Comfrey root concentrate, 8 ounces of that, 4 ounces of all the others, 8 ounces of comfrey root. Now the 4 other items, 32 ounces of Bragg's organic apple cider vinegar. 32 ounces of Bragg's, that's Bragg, organic apple cider vinegar. Next one is 20 ounces of honey. 20 ounces of honey. Now the raw honey, the unfiltered local raw honey is best, untreated. 20 ounces of vegetable glycerine. 20 ounces of vegetable glycerine.
Wow.
And finally, 8 ounces of garlic juice. That's fresh, raw, organic garlic juice. 8 ounces.
8 ounces of what?
Garlic juice.
Garlic juice.
Garlic.
Do they sell garlic juice like that?
You can crush the garlic and get the juice out of them. Fresher the better.
Okay, because I know you can also buy little pills of garlic, but that would probably not give you the same as the garlic juice. What you're looking for.
I'm not sure.
So you put all these together and it cures about anything, huh?
Yes. Each concentrate should be made individually first. Start by soaking each herb for 4 hours or more in
90 seconds.
Water to cover them. Soak them for 4 hours. After soaking, add some more water so the total added water equals, say, 16 ounces of water per 4 ounces of herb.
Uh-huh.
Then simmer on very low heat in a covered saucepan or a double boiler for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then strain it and place it in an uncovered, clean pan and
60
simmer down to about
seconds.
a quarter of the original amount of liquid.
Wow.
That's
interesting.
Yeah. And just to give an idea, to make 8 ounces of garlic juice takes about 1 full pound of fresh garlic. But garlic juice is very powerful. You could call it the health equivalent of nuclear weaponry.
Yes. Takes 1 pound. Yes. Of garlic. Wow. Interesting. Well, we are
8 ounces of juice.
We are about out of
Actually,
time
now,
here.
This will keep indefinitely, by the way. This formula will keep forever.
So you can make this, and you put all those ingredients together.
10 seconds.
And let it simmer in a
They'll
pan.
defeat any plague. Yeah, they'll keep you safe from any plague.
I'll be darned. That's pretty interesting because, there is that risk of plague again here in 2012. But, well, Jonathan, we have to go. What is your website if somebody wants to order one of your books? I should ask you real fast.
Beforeus.com. That's www.beforeus.com. And if they want Will You Survive book, they just click on the link at the bottom of the page. It'll take you through to a list of the products, and one of them is Will You Survive.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, my brother. God bless you, and God bless everybody in the listening audience. And we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, Jonathan.